Welcome back to the channel. Today, going to do something a little bit different, just a bit of practical advice that I wanted to dive into. So I've taught at a number of sort of production retreats and seminars, and I've lectured around, but one subject that I always really enjoy talking about is sort of workflow when it comes to production. And it's such an overlooked yet like pretty crucial aspect to successfully like graduating from like a library of hundreds of unfinished loops to actual projects that you're releasing. So one of the key skills for me to kind of achieve this is to be really fast when it comes to working in the studio. So when I say fast, like why fast? Like I'm not talking about bragging about how many tracks you can finish and I did a track in 1 hour. And that's stupid. If a track needs 1,000 hours to finish, if that's what it takes, then that's what it should take. It's not about breaking records or anything. What is important though is realizing that quite often the raw passion that you need to connect with your audience is kind of fleeting. So you want to develop skills to get those ideas out of your head as quickly as possible. For somebody like me, for example, I have ADHD. It's both a weapon and a curse at times, but I have to get things out as soon as they come into my head. Otherwise, they are in and out the other side and I'm on to the next thing. So having sort of structures in place to kind of get me to steamroll through ideas really quickly is really key to me actually getting stuff done. I don't always get this right, but I have released, I think, around 6 albums and hundreds of singles and remixes, all on, everything from indie to major labels like Armada, remixed big artists like Armin van Buuren and that kind of stuff. So I can also say from experience, most often it's the ones that you get out quickly that do the best for you. It's not the ones that you spend the most time on mixing. So anyways, let's cut to the chase. I want to dive into a couple of tips that I try to adhere to stay quick when I'm working on productions in the studio. So number one, your production environment. Like I'm talking about the room, but also the gear in the room and how I interact with my DAW. Now, for me personally, it's really important that I feel an overwhelming sense of needing to get shit done when I walk into my room. I want it to be inspiring, and I want to feel like sitting in this chair automatically makes me want to be working on music. This sounds silly, but I place quite a high value on making sure that the lighting in the room is nice, that the gear is dusted off and clean, the place smells nice. I've got a diffuser in the back there, so it's always, it's got a pleasant ambience sitting here. Yeah, it's inspiring to be in the seat, and you want it, and you really kind of want to feed that creativity in that sense. And also the gear, I have taken steps where I can to make sure that stuff is plugged in all the time. If it's inconvenient, you're not going to use it. So make sure that you have a system in place where you can get everything in at a moment's notice. Now, I'm not advocating for buying tons of equipment. You don't need it. What I will say is that I probably don't use my gear as much as what I should, but I find it inspiring to have, and anything that I think inspires you to make music is worth surrounding yourself with. So again, I'm not saying that you need to get any of this stuff, but for me, it's more about having something that's inspirational. But at the same time, I'll also easily get rid of stuff sometimes if I find that it's a complete waste of space or it's just not something that really excites me. Where I think the gear really does matter, though, for somebody like me, I do play quite well. I am a pianist and a classically trained pianist and a keyboardist. But that's also no excuse. There's enough tools these days for you to be able to, as somebody that doesn't play well, use like sort of pitch quantization and quantized tools in your DAW and get physical with a controller. I think having a controller to get your ideas out is it's a powerful tool. And I place a lot of value on actually, banging on keys and pads is always going to be a really super quick way to get new ideas out as they come into your head. So for me right now, I have a lot of controllers lying around that I kind of rotate in and out, stuff like the launch control that gets used for DJ setups and things as well as in the studio. But I think if I have to pick sort of 2 core things right now that I really like, that would be the Bitwig Connect and the Novation Launch Key Mark IV. I've got the 37 full key size over here. Now, the Bitwig, you can go check out the review that I did on the channel for that. It's an excellent piece of kit. I did have a few things that I wish they had done, like the digital outputs on that, but the control surface is amazing. The DAW integration on the launch key is fantastic. They're pretty reasonably priced too, so I highly recommend you check that out. The only thing I'm not crazy about is the launch keys, key beds. There's no aftertouch on that as well, so I do often rely on my 61 key Arturia Keylab for when I want to play, like a pianist, really. But for getting ideas out quickly with drum pads, the sequencing functions, the DAW functions on the launch key in conjunction with something like Bitwig are fantastic. So I highly recommend you check that out. Right, so let's move into the next point. Now the next three are going to kind of feed into each other. So let's get started. So avoid option paralysis. I mean, option paralysis is definitely a thing. And like I said, sometimes less is more. You don't need thousands of plugins to write music. Honestly, I mean, 90% of what I do most of the time I can do with Polymer and Bitwig, and that's it. Stock plugins these days, at this stage, you could probably do pretty much anything with stock plugins. They really are good these days across the board. You don't need to be locked into a specific DAW either. Anything from Cubase to Ableton to Logic is going to have a tool set that you can use 100%. Now, obviously, I do have a bunch of plugins. I'm in a position where I get sent a lot of stuff. I also don't think that you should stay away from trying new stuff. Once again, it's the same as the hardware. If you find stuff that's inspiring, then you should use it. But when it comes to writing music, I don't want to get stuck trying to decide what tool to use. I want to know what tool to use. And it's really key to kind of just try and make sure that your sort of collection is kind of scaled down so that you can, accommodate that. It's hard when you've got too much stuff to choose from. And I mean, go through your plugin collection. Like I did a big purge recently, and this is not to say that any of these plugins were not good, but you don't need 5 Juno 106 emulations, which is literally what I ended up deleting. I kept the Arturia one. Is it the best? Is it the most accurate? Probably not. But I have the Arturia collection, and it works for me. Pick something with a UI that you feel comfortable with. It's more important than, I'm not going to say it's more important than the sound, but it's more important than it being accurate to the original hardware. Nobody's going to know the difference. Who cares? Just pick one that you like working with and stick with that and learn it well. Okay, number 3, stay organized. Okay, same thing. Option paralysis is a vibe. So, make sure that your stuff is organized so that you don't waste time looking at lists of plugins and samples for that matter. When you have something in your head, you should be thinking about that thing only, not about what tool you need to apply to make it work. That should be sort of automatic almost. So I have a system in Bitwig where I like to organize all the plugins. So apart from kind of scaling the plugin collection down, I get rid of the stuff that I don't really need, but I'll also try to shy away from going to a specific plugin developer and then looking through what plugins I might have from them. I organize all my stuff as like dynamics, for example. They're all in groups. So if I am working on a track and I have a specific part that I'm working on and I think I need to control dynamics, all I do is I click on dynamics and I'm presented with a list of plugins that all do fairly different things. I try to keep stuff that is unique so that I can look at a manageable sized list and go, okay, this saturation has a tone that I think will work really well with that, and bam, then you're done. Same goes for samples. I use a tool called Sononym. You can go check that out. There's a major version that's supposed to be coming out soon. It hasn't been updated for quite a while. Loopmasters has an amazing browser as well. I haven't used Splice in quite some time, but Sononym, aside from the AI features, what I do really like about it is its sort of sample management functions that you can do similarity searches and then find similar sounds related to that. But the cool thing about it is that you can actually create your own custom libraries. So I don't always go into Sononym to find stuff, but rather, I have a sample directory full of different labels. And rather than going into those labels and then looking for samples from that label, I rather want to go to my own custom folder, which is essentially duplicate copies of the best from all my sample libraries. But I'll go in there and I've got a folder of kick drums that I know that every single kick drum in that folder works in some way or another. So there's just minimal time spent on fiddling with stuff like that. Doing that as well is probably going to cut down a lot of your mixing time. If you use a sound that doesn't need to be tweaked, then you've cut an entire stage out of the track in terms of EQing and mixing and all that kind of stuff. Just drop a sample in, and if it works, you don't have to touch it again. That's a whole bunch of extra tasks that are getting in the way of your creativity that you don't have to do anymore. Okay, number 4. Now, this is arguably the most important of them all. Now, for me personally, I like to separate the cognitive load for various things that come with working in a studio. For example, staying organized doesn't happen automatically. You need to put work into that. You need to spend time to build those systems to get yourself organized. But you don't want to be putting that work in whilst you're trying to be creative. That negates the whole point of doing that. So you need to be scheduling time to do stuff like that so that your mind is focused on one kind of work at any specific time. So by the same token, sound design kind of takes a different mental state to do. It's still creative, but it's more fiddly and it's more technical and it's more explorative. It's not about kind of always just getting ideas out of your head. So I like to schedule time for sound design, and it's kind of the same as my daily life. I've been trying to do this more and more. If I have a thought during the day, I'll make a note. I don't try and action it immediately. I'll make a note and I'll check it at the end of the day, and then I'll take those notes and I'll kind of turn them into something that needs to happen, a project that needs to be done at some point. By the same token, I'll spend time doing sound design work, and I'll make notes of sounds that I do along the way. And then when it comes to being creative, I can roll all of those things into a project. I also like to schedule what I call playtime, where I have zero obligations to finish anything or accomplish anything in the studio. It's purely about just enjoying myself. And that's the kind of time that I will spend playing with new toys, downloading the latest plugins, testing new stuff out. Also just, listening to presets and rating them. And then also just often stupid experiments in the DAW, just like trying combinations of effects and things that I've never done before. Or just, listening and A/Bing different types of saturation so that you start becoming familiar with those things. That just, again, takes all the guesswork out of it when it comes to actually being creative. Those things become second nature. It's like riding a bike. You don't have to go and listen to the distortion to pick the right one. You already know that because you spent the time doing it in another session. Right, so lastly, and this has taken me 20 years to kind of figure out, and I'm still not sure I have figured out 100%, but stop giving a fuck when you're in the studio. Seriously, nobody cares about your mix. If it's crap, you can fix it later. You do that once the core idea is out of your head. Spending an hour EQing a kick is 100% going to kill and stifle any sort of creativity that you're trying to get out of your system. Again, 99% of the time, historically, tracks of mine that blew up in charts and things like that were the ones that I didn't really like the production on. But I got an idea out at the time. I was feeling really inspired. I got this idea out and then just said, fuck it, let's just push send, get it out. That often happened when I was on a deadline, so I didn't have the luxury of second guessing myself. And more often than not, those were the ones that really connected with an audience and did super well. We've all got egos and we're all, quite hard on ourselves, but no, it's a tough thing to come to terms with. But you also got to realize that constantly worrying about, whether you sound as good as somebody else is always going to have the outcome that you're going to be the second person to arrive at that sound. And it's really when you start listening to yourself that the magic happens. You write something original that connects with people. Now, maybe this sounds a little bit cliche, but if you haven't read anything by Mark Manson, I highly recommend you check his books out. Otherwise, go check him on YouTube. He's got a channel as well. But just really practical advice that often follows the same idea. Basically, you're not special. Just try to enjoy yourself, and you will be surprised to see what you can achieve when you do so. Anyhow, thank you for listening to me ramble on. If you did like the video, do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe button and all of that nonsense. What you can do is also join us on Patreon. I'll leave links in the description below. Until next time, I'll catch you then. Cheers.